Hello everyone, my name is Lydia and welcome to my studio. Today we're going to be painting Tea Time is Ducky. I'll go over the materials that you need and guide you through the process. Don't forget, if you like the video, please hit the like button and subscribe. So grab yourself something to stay hydrated and I'll meet you back at the easel. Let's go over the materials we're going to need to do the painting today. I'm going to be working on a 16 by 20 inch stretched and primed canvas, and it's turned on the horizontal. I'm going to be using acrylic paints. The colors I'm using are Alizarin Crimson, Cadmium Red Medium, Cadmium Yellow Medium, Cobalt Blue, Burnt Sienna, Paynes Gray, Titanium White, and I'm actually running a little low on my titanium white, so I have put some gesso here to do the background with. The brushes I'm going to be using are going to be a 2-inch flat brush. This is going to help get the paint on the canvas quicker in the for the background. A 1/2 inch angled brush and a small round brush. You're going to want to have a jar of water for rinsing your brushes, an old cloth for wiping your brushes. You can also use a paper towel, a mister bottle for keeping everything moist. And an option is to have a ruler nearby to do some measuring. So let's get started. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get our background in, and I'm making a mark about 4 inches up on each side, and you can find that a couple different ways. So if this side of your canvas is 16 inches, you can go about halfway and then come halfway between the bottom and where your halfway point is and make a mark on each side. Or if you prefer to be a little bit more exact, you can take your handy dandy ruler and make a mark about 4 inches up on each side. So here and here. And I'm going to take my little trusty ginormous T-square and I'm going to connect these. And you certainly, if you're a little off with your line, straighten it up as you paint. I like to give myself a little guideline, or not even maybe just a whole line. Sometimes I'll just make little tick marks along the way. But that way you can have a nice straight line. This is going to be our tabletop, and I'll probably come up a little bit down here and darken this area down here as we go along. So I'm going to dip my brush in my jar of water, get it in it wet, and just wipe off some of the excess. I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to use my gesso, and I'm going to get quite a bit of gesso on my brush on each side. Stick it right in there. And then I'm going to come over here to the outside edge of my Cobalt Blue, and I'm going to sweep from in to out to try to get some of that on my brush. And then I'm going to come up and I'm just going to start making my crisscross strokes. I'm going to back away from my brush and just start making my crisscross strokes. And using this big brush helps you get a lot of paint on at once. Come back in, get a little bit more of that blue, and work it in. Get a little more water on my brush. And I'm going to come back in. I didn't rinse the brush, I just got a little more water on, get some more of my white. And I'm going to come from below where I was and start working that back up into the blue at the top. A little bit more of my white. Come down again. I didn't rinse my brush out. Coming on down, I'm going to go ahead and make that nice little straight line across. And then I'm going to come into my water, and I'm going to not really wipe too much of that off and just come back through and just sweep back and forth just to blend it in. Don't forget to get the sides of your painting. You can either come back and get them later or get them as you go. And once you have this blended the way that you like it, we're going to dip into our, I'm not rinsing my brush off, I'm going to dip directly into my burnt sienna. I'm going to flip my brush onto the other corner, get a little bit of that Paynes Gray, and come back up into my white, and just mix those two together with this big brush. And I'm just going to come down and go ahead and get this in. So this is going to be my table, and I do want to get it a little darker than that, so I'm going to pick up a little bit more of that burnt sienna. A little more water, and just blend that in. And remember, this is just our base coat. Just getting some of that base color in. I'm going to come back in. I'm not going to rinse my brush. I'm going to go back in. I'm not going to add any white this time. I'm just going to go from one corner, I put some burnt sienna, and the other I got some Paynes Gray, and I'm just going to brush those both in. And I'm going to do that again. One corner burnt sienna, the other Paynes Gray, and just work that across. And I'm going to make sure I try to keep that straight line. I'm going to get a little water on the brush. Make sure I get that nice line across. There we go. And I do like that bit of striation in my colors because that's going to give me something to play with. There we go. So once you have this the way you like it, we're going to let it dry. We'll rinse and dry our 2-inch brush, and we'll come back for the next step. We're going to move on, and we're going to start to create a little bit of what looks like wood grain down in our table here. So I'm wetting my 1/2-inch angle brush in my jar, and I'm getting some of that excess water off. And I'm going to mix up it's a purple, I'm mixing up a little purple gray color. So I've taken some Alizarin Crimson, some of my Cobalt Blue, some white, pour a little bit more of that crimson in there, a hint, I'm just doing a little hint of the burnt sienna, and I'm going to get a little more white because I want it to be a little bit lighter. So you want to start with this being fairly dry, and I'm going to start right up to the edge here, and I'm just going to start to draw straight lines across and just let the paint fall off the brush as I'm going across. And I'll come back in and I'll get some more paint on the brush. I'll go right below where that line is, and as you can see when I do that, it leaves some of that color underneath that we put on before, so that it appears as though there's some grain coming through. And each time I go back and get a little bit more paint on my brush, and I'm going to start from this side because not as much is coming off there. Come back over here. And my brush is only slightly damp, So I'm coming back in, getting some more of that same paint, starting over at the edge, and just pulling it across. And I'm going to go back over this top layer here, just a little. And we do still have a bit more things to do, so we're putting shadows in. So I'm going to mix up a little more. So again, it's Alizarin Crimson, Cobalt Blue, a little burnt sienna, and white. Come over to the edge. And if you see something that's a little too harsh, you can go back over it again. And I'm going to turn my brush because I'm going to come down in this little bottom corner. And get that little bottom area down there. There we go. And so then what I'm going to do is I'm not going to clean my brush off. I'm going to get just the white and a hint of the color we just mixed. So it's lightening it to a more white color, but not completely white. And we're just going to start to go back over it again. And you can do as many layers of this as you want to get the look that you want. It's just more of a white aged table. And I'm just dragging it across. Pick some more paint up. Come back in, a little more of that white. My brush is fairly dry, it's just slightly damp. And this time I'm going to wet my brush. I'm going to go just into the white, so it's really going to be almost white. Mix what's on my brush in that white and just start coming across. And I'm just doing little sweeps here and there. I'm not trying to make straight lines anymore. I'm even turning my brush a little bit on its edge and just making little streaks of the white where I feel like maybe not enough white came in. And you can do as many layers of this as you like. Just keeping the strokes horizontal. I'm going to go back in and mix a little bit more of this purple color with the Alizarin Crimson and the blue, and some of the white, and a bit of burnt sienna, a little bit more of that Alizarin, a bit more of the white, so it's that same darker color. And this time I'm going to be on the chiseled edge of the brush. I don't want too much paint on my brush, so I'm going to wipe some of that off. And I'm just going to go back in and make some, just almost like some areas in the table that are imperfections. I did add a little bit more of the burnt sienna there. There we go. And if you find an area that just is too dark for you, then you can actually just kind of come back in, get some of that white, mix it back in, and just go in. And you can keep working back and forth between those colors until you have it the way that you like it. So we're going to let this dry, rinse and dry our angle brush, and we'll come back for the next step. So let's talk about the drawing a little bit. So it's a rubber ducky in a teacup, and we've got these banners going across at a diagonal on the canvas. And what I did is I came about 1.5 inches in and 1.5 inches over from my left side, and I made a point. Then I came over about, it's not quite halfway, so maybe about 9.5 inches in, and I made another little dot. And I did a little curving to create a little attachment so that those two are connected. And then I came down just below and maybe put about 1 inch between the top and the bottom and did another little curve here. Right, and that gives you the bottom of your saucer. And then what I did is I went ahead before I drew these back lines of the saucer and did the teacup. So if you look, I came in from there. So I came in from the side of the canvas about 3 inches, and then I came in just above where my saucer line is about 4 inches. So I have 3 inches here and 4 inches here, make a little curve and connect. Then I came over about 2 inches in from my saucer dot, came straight across and drew a little line there. And then I went up to where I'm even with this dot from the little center point here and drew a little dot, and I connected those two straight down all the way to the saucer. And then from there, you want to create a handle, and the handle is going to come down maybe about 1/2 inch, and you'll come out, curve in, come out, and curve in by going in and repeating that curve smaller on the inside. So again, maybe there's about 1/2 inch between the two. And then once you get that drawn, so you have that straight down line, so then you take these two lines and you connect them, and then you'll come back around here to make a little curve, and then you'll do a smaller circle within that curve. And with little rubber ducky, think of it as, so this is really just a triangle here. So if you think of going up and then coming back down into a little triangle, you'll have his body, and you'll come off of that and make a little half circle for his head. And then 2 little triangles to make his mouth or his bill. And then you'll make a partial S. So it'll come in with a small little curve in as though you're starting the letter S, and then you'll curve it back down. And then you could put the little point on his head. And then you can come back came down maybe about 2 inches or about maybe midway where your cup is, and you make your little curve if you haven't done that already. And then the eye is just a circle and a small little circle within the circle that's going to be at the top. The little flags, I started at the top corner and I went down and came not quite halfway, so that's probably, let's see about how far down that is. So about 7 inches from the top. So you have a dot here and a dot at the very top corner, and just connect them. And I wanted one of the flags to be kind of partially off the canvas, so I started that one And then I just started creating triangles facing down. So now what I'm gonna do is I've mixed up a little bit of green. So I took mostly yellow, a hint of my cobalt blue, and some white. And I just mix those together because I want my cup to be green, kind of a greenish yellow. I am gonna give this a round look, so I'm just gonna start filling this in, filling in my cup. I think I'm gonna have a little bit more brightness coming in this way so that there's gonna be some light hitting from this side and there'll be a shadow going off that side. That's what I think I'm going to do. So I'm gonna make a little bit, I'm gonna take a little bit of white and add to my green. So this side is gonna be a little lighter as I blend it down. All the way. And I'm using my 1/2 inch angle brush if I haven't said that already. And then I'm gonna go back into just the regular color. I didn't do anything, I didn't rinse my brush. I'm gonna go into that green on this side. We're just gonna get this filled in. And I'm going to add a little more blue and make this a little bit more bluish green over here. Get a little water. There we go. So it's a little darker on this side. Then I'm going to come back into my white and come back over on this side and just work that in. Then I'm going to come straight down the middle and just blend those together. Some of that paint off my brush. I'm going to come back over here with a little more white and work that in, just blend that in on this side. Then I'm going to come back into I added a little water to my brush, get a little more blue, some more yellow, and a little white. And then I'm going to come back. And this is why I have my angle brush, so I'm going to follow the curve of my handle around. Put a little bit more of that dark green over there. And just get all that worked in. And we'll be adding more highlights to that, not to worry. And a little more yellow. And then I'm also going to have the inside of the saucer, I'm also going to have it be a greenish blue color. So I'm going to take the same color and I'm just going to start to work it in to the saucer as well. And I'm going to leave a little gap there so we can see where the saucer is, and we'll start putting a little highlights in there. The bottom of the saucer, I'm going to have it more white than the green, but it'll still be a lighter greenish yellow color. Right along the contour of my chalk line. You don't have to do a bright pink chalk line. I just did that so you can see it as we're working it to get the paint on the canvas. little more white. Gonna come along these edges here so we can see where the inside and the outside are different. There we go. I'm also wanting to get the inside here. Now this inner circle is going to be my T, but this outer circle is also going to be part of the cup itself. So I'm going to put that, I'm going to make it light as well. So I'm just getting some of that lighter green with some white. And I'm just going to go in with just the very tip of that angle brush. I have a lot of paint on the brush. But I'm going to go in and just work on getting that filled in. I'm going to let the cup dry. I'll get some of this paint off my angle brush. I'm going to start filling in Rubber Ducky. So I'm going to pick up some of my Cadmium Red, pull that off to the side. And I'm going to add just a little bit of this Cadmium Yellow. See if I can create a darker orange color and some white. So I'm going to give them a little darker undertone, and then we'll come back and put the yellow highlights in on them, just get them filled in. There we go. Just added a little bit more white to that mixture. Outside my little Ducky line there. Go up and get that little poke out. And this is just the underpainting. I know he's not a yellow Ducky yet, but he will be. I'm just using that pointed edge of that brush to go around these little spots. Just get them pretty much filled in. I'm going to take my brush, I'm not going to rinse it out. I'm just going to add this, whatever's in my brush, to a little bit of the burnt sienna. And I pulled in just a hint, just a really small amount of that, of the Paynes Gray. And I'm going to pull in a little bit of white into that. And I'm just going to come in and start filling in where my T might be. I want that to be a little bit more dark, so I'm pulling a little bit more Paynes Gray and burnt sienna. There we go. And again, we're going to be refining everything. This is just to get the base color in. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get all that paint out of my brush, come up here, and I'm just going to start filling in just with white for now. Just to know, and if there's a little bit of like some green or other colors in the paint, that's okay. I just want to go ahead and get my flags in, the banners in, to know where they are. This is where utilizing that edge of your brush, this is why having an angle brush helps. You can get into some of the corners need to go around the ducky. All right, and this is not the final color of our banners, our flags. I'm gonna have other colors worked in. I'm gonna go ahead and rinse and dry my angled brush, and we'll come back in for the next step. Okay, so we're gonna be working with our small round brush, and we're gonna start to get some detail in on our cup. So I'm gonna take that same green color that I have, I'm gonna add some white. Got some water on my brush. I want this to be fairly light, so I want a lighter green. And I'm gonna start to dig into getting some green highlights on my cup. So I'm gonna have some light coming in from right to left. So I'm gonna start by putting in a little bit of a highlight here. And bringing it on down and around. I'll take some of that green, so some yellow, a little bit of blue. And I'm just going to start by going around. And underneath it's going to be darker on the handle. A little bit more of that darker green. And then I'm going to come back into the light color and bring it in. Just kind of mix that in. And a little bit more of the dark color for the underneath part. And down under here, it's going to be even darker, so I added a little bit more of the blue. So it'll have a darker blue-green. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to have some of that darker color over here as well. So it's a little bit more bluish green. Coming back in, I'm going to get a little bit more of that cobalt blue. Add it in. Add a little bit of white. And come in over here. I'll come in and get some white and just kind of bring all of that together. Get a little water. Water's good for blending. A little more yellow in there. Into my blue, and I'm just going to come in. It's pretty wet on my brush, and I'm going to come in to that blue and a little bit of yellow and just start working that in. A little more water and just blend that all together. And I'm going to start making a little bit of a curve in my stroke. Just a slight curve right here in the middle, just to kind of give it that round feel. A little bit more of that lighter green over here. All right, and so the inside is going to be a little bit more of a white green. So the inside of my cup. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to place my pinky finger down and just come around this inner rim and bring that on around here. And then on top, This will create that outer rim area there. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. And then a little bit of a small line to go right on the front of the cup. So now when we have the light coming through, so there may be a little bit of light hitting back here and a little bit here, but everything else in front may be a little darker. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a little bit of this lighter green color and I'm gonna bring it around the back here and the back here and here. Then I'm going to grab some of the darker color and work it in. I want it even a little more dark than that, so I'm going to get a bit more of that blue, mix it in. And just make little circular motions. Underneath the saucer, I'm going to have it more of a lighter, almost white, but it's going to have a bit of that green color. So I'm going to take a little bit of this green color, a little bit of white, and I'm going to bring that up around where the rim might be. Do a little bit more of that color. So I got that lighter color, and then I bring it around the back side here and the back side here. And I'm just going to start to work it down, and as I go down, I'm going to add a little bit more of the darker color, so a little bit more of that blue-green, and bring that down here. And of course, you can make your cup any color that you want. Maybe you have a favorite teacup yourself. You can make it the color of your favorite teacup. Get a little bit more of my white, mix it into my green, and bring that so there's a separation of the rim of the tea plate. And I'm going to hit a little bit of that light color back here, and maybe a little bit, not too much around that side. And then down here, I'm going to bring a little bit of that, so it looks like there's a little part down here at the base that it's resting on. And I'm going to create a little darker shadows on this little outer edge. Get a little bit more yellow in that. Make it a little more green. So it looks like it's curving in on each side. And then there's that little bit of a white area down here. That is resting on right along in here. And that curves up, and it curves up. All right, let's see what we got here. All right, so there may be a little bit more light hitting here as well. Hit a little bit more light there, and just blend that in. All right, and when you get the cup the way that you want it, blend that a little more, and hitting there. I'm actually going to take some of the Alizarin Crimson, and I'm going to add some white to that. I didn't rinse my brush out. A little more crimson. I'm going to mix that white in with it. And I'm going to come around and I'm going to do what would be considered more of a cast shadow on this side. So I'm just going to hit a little bit of that pink color over here, and it'll let me know that there's a difference between where the green of my cup is and the green of my saucer. I'm going to do that same little thing right here. And then maybe where these two pieces meet, where the handle is, I'm gonna go back into that green a little bit. Come down in here and just blend that a little more. All right, and you can stand back, look at it. I'm gonna go back in and get a little blue. And I'm actually gonna take a little bit of this cadmium red and just mix it into that blue. So we'll take it back a little bit. And I'm just gonna come along in here, hit a few shadow areas down in here where it might get a little darker. Maybe a few over in here, or maybe a little darker here. All right, and then I'm gonna take that same color and mix a little bit, whatever's on my brush, with some burnt sienna and some white. And I'm just gonna bring in, so if my light is coming in from this side, I'm just gonna bring in a little bit more shadow through here, get a little bit more white, and just kind of work that in. And I'm gonna add a little bit more of the, if we go back to that original color, the Alizarin Crimson, the color of our table, and I'm just going to flick that in. Get a little water on my brush and just start to blend that a little bit. So it's just telling the story that there's a shadow under there somewhere. Cup is sitting down on the table, so I'm gonna put just a little thin shadow line under here. I'm gonna hit a little bit more of this white highlight over here, just to make it look more round. Get a little bit more of my green. So I mixed up a little bit more blue and my cadmium yellow, a little bit of white. I'm just gonna come in and just work that in where that white is. Get a little water. There we go. A little more white. Just work that around in there. I'm going to do that very light green. I'm just going to kind of hit it maybe where I think maybe some of the glass, the ceramic might be catching some of the light. And I want to do a little dark rim through here. I'm just hitting some white where I think there may be a little bit of some brighter white color. And it really does have a little bit of green in it. All right, I'm gonna come down to my burnt sienna, a little bit of my Paynes Gray, a little bit of white. I may even take a little bit of my Cad Red and mix it in there. More burnt sienna. I'm gonna come around and refine my little T area. All right, so we're gonna give that a chance to dry. And we'll work on our little ducky while I have this dark color on, and we can come back and clean that up if we need to. I'm gonna go ahead and get a little bit more of my Paynes Gray. I'm gonna come in and fill in the circle of the ducky eye. Just with the Paynes Gray and a little bit of burnt sienna in it. There we go. All right, I'm gonna get all of this paint out of my brush. And what I'm going to do, make sure all that paint's in our brush, I'm just gonna pick up some of the yellow, and I'm just gonna start to go in and just sweep on some of the yellow in the ducky. And mix a little bit of white on the top. And just let them make little strokes back and forth. And I'm going to do the same on the top of his head, just a little white and yellow. Get the little part that sticks up. Mostly just yellow through here. That's why it's nice to have the base coat on with the orange, because the yellow can be so transparent. But if you just have something underneath it, and I'm just going to start to make little circular motions, get a little white up here. Just start to get a little more blending going on with him. A little more water. There may be just a little bit more of a shadow back through here. I'm just going to blend a little bit more of that orange color, but mostly yellow, but just kind of blend that in. Maybe a little bit more of a shadow back through here as well. Not as much light hitting it. And go back in just the yellow. Blend them out. More yellow and white toward the front here, where the light might be hitting them a little more. Might be a little darker down under here a little bit. So I'm going to get a little bit of that alizarin, and then the yellow. Just kind of meld those together. I'm just going to get the Alizarin Crimson only. And just get his beak filled in. Or his bill filled in. There we go, there's that. And then I'm going to rinse all the color off my brush, wet brush. And I'm going to come in and make little circular motions. Just to get them to blend a little more. All right. I do want to refine his eye a little more before I put the actual color in, so I want to refine that circle a little more. All right. So we're going to let that dry, and then we'll come back with our angle brush and we'll work on the flags. So now we're going to do our flags, and I'm going to have them be a pinkish blue color, so maybe a little mauve. So I'm going to take my small round brush, I'm going to get it wet, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to take mostly white, and I'm going to grab a little bit of my Cadmium Red Medium, and that will make a pink color. And I'm going to add just a touch, just a little tiny bit of the blue. And I'm just going to start filling in my flags. And if you want, you could use your angle brush, your 1/2 inch angle brush for this, but I'm just going to go ahead and use this small brush because we're going to go right back into getting our duck detailed. And you don't have to have any specific stroke on your flag. And it's probably best that you don't, because these are kind of a fabric, so having some variation in them is fine. And as I go along, I'm going to go ahead and put a little connectivity between them with the same paint color. Once you get your flags the way that you want them, we're going to let those dry. We're going to rinse out this brush, and we're going to go ahead and use the same brush because we're going to do a little detail work on our duck. So we rinsed out all the color out of our little round brush, and we're going to come in, and I want some pure yellow. So I'm going to grab some of my cadmium yellow, bring it down here, and some pure white, and mix it in. A little bit more of that white. And I'm going to start to put the brightest yellows on my duck. So I'm going to come up here at the top of the head, and if we've lost any refinement while doing our flags, we can put that back in. And he's going to be really light and bright at the top and around his eye. And I'm just going to start to make circular motions as I'm starting to blend that down. And I'm going to put a little bit of that yellow. There's a little area here that's darker. I'm going to leave that there for his wing. Maybe the little area under his chin gets a little shadow. And then the little area right in the crook behind the neck and where the tail is, maybe a little bit of that darker color can stay there. And then underneath that, we'll just refine around his tail a little bit. And I'm going to come down here and make it a little brighter down at the bottom, but leave that little darker area there for the wing that's right here. I'm going to go ahead and start to refine him down at the bottom so he looks like he might be recessed in the cup of tea or coffee. This is going to be tea time, but you can certainly make it coffee time if you like. And I'm going to get a little bit more of my white and just rub what's on my brush. So that yellow that's on my brush in that white. And I'm going to come up to the top of his head, put a little bit more of a shadow, and then the little part that's poking up. And then I'm going to put a little light piece right under there and maybe hit some lighter bits at the front of his body. So you maybe have some spots here and there that maybe are lighter than others. Maybe some light is hitting somewhere on the body. I'm just gonna make this a little more yellow there. And then I'm gonna take some of my cadmium red and I'm gonna bring it down. I don't want too much of it. I want it to be a little more orange. And I'm gonna come in and I'm going to start to hit some areas on his beak, or the bill, hit areas on the bill to make it look a little bit more dimensional. And I'm going to come back into just the cad red. I didn't rinse my brush. Just kind of blend that in. And I'm going to come back, I'm going to wipe some of that red off my brush, come back down with the white, and maybe come in and hit right on top of his nose and blend that by making little circular motions. And I'm actually going to work that down a little bit. And then I'm going to I want it to be a little darker through the mouth area. And then come back in and just hit some of that orange color. And I'm just going to take my finger, tap it, and blend it. So it kind of gives you the sense that get a little bit more of that red under there on the bottom part, because that's going to be a little bit darker. Here we go. And I'm going to take a little hint of my white. So I'm just grabbing some titanium white and I'm going to mix it up. And I want to kind of do a little area, just kind of a little dot. I want to make it look like he's smiling a little bit. So there we go. And I can take some of that and do a little bit of a highlight on top of the nose. And I'm going to take some of that orange color and I want to refine just to hit around that where the wing might be just a little bit. And then I'm going to make it so that he or she is looking up. So I'm going to make the bottom part of the eye white. So I'm going to get this paint off my brush. And I'm going to start by just outlining where I want the white to be. And then I'm going to fill in the rest. I don't know if you can see, I'll try to get my hand out of the way. There we go. And then I'm going to put just, I'm dipping directly into my white. And I don't want too much paint, but I do have a little bit on the tip of the brush. And I'm going to put that right in there. To my black. I'm going back into my Paynes Gray and just blend right at the bottom there. There we go. I'm liking that. And then what I'm going to go ahead and do is grab my angled brush, make sure it's clean, and I'm going to come back into some of this white. And I'm just going to kind of go into random areas. I don't want too much paint on the brush. And just again, maybe brighten up some of the areas that need to be brightened up down on the table here. And over here, I'm going to try to keep that shadow going. So I'm just brightening up wherever there's no shadow hitting. Just making some marks across the way that are still more of a dry brush because my brush is dry, I didn't wet it. It can be a little bit damp, but not too much. And I'm going to put just a little bit there just to make it seem like there's a circle. And then maybe just a little hit, just a tad bit there. And what I want to do also is I'm going to lift this up, pop this out. And so down at the bottom, I'm going to add a little bit more of the darker colors, especially on each edge to kind of bring your eye. So I'm doing that, a little bit of the burnt sienna, some of my Alizarin Crimson, a hint of blue and white, so it's that purple color with a bit of brown in it. And I'm just going to hit down at the bottom area so it's just a little darker on each corner, just to kind of bring your eye a little bit more in toward the cup area. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into, with my small brush, into a little bit of this white. And I added this little piece here, so I just came down with a little square, and then I'm just going to bring that in to brighten it up a little bit. Don't have to hit every area. Don't want too much paint on the brush. And hit a few. Just, you can mix a little bit of green in this if you want, but I want it to be a little more white. I'm gonna hit a little bit of just white on top of the head here. There we go, give them a little shimmer. little shimmer here. Kind of maybe he's a little wet, little ducky. And if there's any other areas you feel like you need to highlight a little more, you can. I'm just gonna snug that out a little bit. Like maybe a little bit more of the lighter green color is hitting along the edge here. Just a little bit, catching some of that light. So again, you can play with it. I'm going to put the words tea here and time here. You don't have to put anything if you don't want, but I'm going to make sure that my brush is clean. And I'm going to mix a little Alizarin Crimson and purple with a hint of white. And I want to make sure that I get a little, maybe where the little flags are attached. Maybe drawing a little bit of a string here, just to give the indication that there's something attaching all of these together. I'm liking that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to decide what color I want the words tea time in. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix my Paynes Gray and my Alizarin Crimson, and that gives me a little darker pinkish black color, kind of a grayed out mauve maybe. There we go. And I'm going to get my brush pretty wet. Whenever you're writing, you want to make sure that your brush has somewhat of a point on it. And these are going to be, they don't have to be pointed, or they don't have to be skinny letters, they can be fatter letters. So I'm going to do my E first. And I'll do the T, and then I'll do the A. And I'm going to go back over it one more time. All right, and then for the time, I'm going to do the I. I'm going to come over and do the E first. There's my E. There's my M. It's kind of hard to see. I'm going to darken that up a little bit. Just to get a little bit more of that. Get a little bit more Paynes Gray in it so I can see it a little better. You can always go back in and hit a little white around the letters as well once they dry. All right, my I and my T. All right, so I'm gonna get a little more paint and go back over those just a little bit, because I still feel like it's T. So I'm coming back through, making my letters a little darker and straightening them up a little bit. I'm gonna go back over onto the T side and do the same thing, picking up a little bit more of my paint. Just going in and making it darker. All right, and I'm gonna go ahead and get a little bit of the white. I'm not rinsing my brush out, just gonna get a little bit of the white, mix what's on my brush, and just maybe go back in and just hit on one side or the other of the letters just to bring them out a little more. Once you've got your letters the way you want them, I'm going to go ahead and sign the painting. So I'm going to use a combination of the Alizarin Crimson and the Paynes Gray. And I'm going to come over to this bottom right-hand corner and sign. There you go, and you can make any changes to the painting that you like, changing the colors, making it your own, but I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for keeping me company today, and I hope you created something special for yourself. Until we meet again, bye-bye.